The April 19th, 1995 Oklahoma City bombing of the Murrah Federal building resulted in over 800 injuries and 168 lost lives. Though overwhelming evidence disputes their claims, the government and mainstream media quickly agreed that the bombing was perpetrated by a terrorist named Timothy McVeigh. Allegedly, McVeigh acted alone and parked a single Ryder truck bomb affront the Murrah building on that morning. However, 20 eyewitnesses reported seeing two men. David Icke wrote, 20 eyewitnesses saw two men in a Ryder truck. Each one described the second man as Middle Eastern and said it absolutely was not Terry Nichols, the patsy John Doe 2 agents tried to blame. All 20 people filled out 302s, investigative reports, but none have ever surfaced. Also, just like 9/11, the Pentagon's 80 CCTVs and the London bombings in the tube, the 12 camera tapes at the Murrah building were seized and withheld, all for reasons of national security. The 20 witnesses' reports were ignored, and the security tapes were withheld. When forced by investigators to find a second patsy, officials came up with Terry Nichols, who they claimed to be McVeigh's accomplice, even though all eyewitnesses agreed the second man in the truck was Middle Eastern, and definitely not Terry Nichols. David Icke wrote, McVeigh was arrested so conveniently for a traffic offense immediately after the bombing for the same reason that Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested in a cinema immediately after the Kennedy assassination, and Osama bin Laden was named as the culprit after 9/11. They are the patsies required by problem-reaction solution to hide the real orchestrators. Just as 9/11 was a massive version of what happened in Oklahoma, so Oklahoma was a repeat of the Kennedy assassination. Lee Harvey Oswald was a U.S. agent who was placed in the right place at the right time without being told exactly why he was there. He realized this after Kennedy was shot and ran. When he was arrested, he said he was a patsy, a stooge, and would have said so in court. That's why he was paraded in public to allow another government agent, Jack Ruby, to shoot him and kill the evidence. In the same way, very possibly, McVeigh was a government stooge who parked the Ryder truck without knowing the full story. On the morning of April 19th, shortly after the bombing, in live broadcasts, CBS, CNN, and NBC all reported on 3 additional bombs inside the building. One of the bombs exploded, and 2 others were found and defused. Oklahoma City's NBC affiliate, KFOR, in their live feed, immediately reported, quote, "The first bomb that was in the federal building did go off. It did the damage that you see right there. The second explosive was found and defused. The third explosive that was found, and they are working on right now as we speak, I understand, both the second and third explosives, if you can imagine this, were larger than the first. So try to imagine 2- or 3-fold happening what we've already seen there. It is just incredible to think that there was that much heavy artillery that was somehow moved into the downtown Oklahoma City Federal building." Once Timothy McVeigh was arrested, all reports of the additional bombs inside the building ceased. The mainstream media quickly parroted the government line, and America was assured that the perpetrators, McVeigh and Nichols, acted alone using a single truck bomb. This, however, has been disproved repeatedly. Out of hundreds of people interviewed, we couldn't find a single person who said they'd only heard one explosion. The University of Oklahoma's own seismographic reports, as well as the U.S. Geological Survey reports, 2 different scientific institutions, show multiple explosions. But for there to have been multiple explosions, Timothy McVeigh would have had to have accomplices, and that didn't fit in with the federal story, especially if the reality showed that it had to be a group that had access to the federal building for long, extended periods of time, like the BATF and the FBI. Even the U.S. Air Force's own 1997 blast effects study of the Oklahoma City bombing verified the impossibility of being the result of a single bomb. General Benton K. Parton concluded that, quote, "It is impossible to ascribe the damage that occurred on April 19, 1995 to a single truck bomb containing 4,800 pounds. In fact, the maximum predicted damage of the floor panels of the Murrah Federal building is equal to approximately 1% of the total floor area of the building. It must be concluded that the damage at the Murrah Federal building is not the result of the truck bomb itself, but rather due to other factors, such as locally placed charges within the building itself. In the report, General Parton also mentions how a single bomb cannot explain the failure of many columns in the back of the building, as compared to the non-failure of columns in the front where the truck was parked. Parton concluded that shaped demolition charges were indeed used inside the building. The blast effect study showed that the maximum damage possible from a single truck bomb would affect only 1% of the floor area. Take a look at any photo of the Murrah building after the explosions. To ascribe the amount of actual damage done to merely this is ludicrous. David Icke wrote, Glenn and Kathy Wilburn, who lost 2 small children in the bombing, worked constantly and passionately for years to uncover the truth of what happened. They conducted and documented more than 300 hours of interviews and persuaded people to talk who had remained silent for fear of the consequences. They established beyond question that a heavily armed bomb squad had been in downtown Oklahoma near the Murrah building that morning before the bombs exploded. Some parents saw these people in their bomb squad uniforms as they dropped off their children at the daycare center in the Murrah building, children they would never see alive again. Eventually, after months of denial by the FBI and other government agencies, the sheriff's department had to admit that the bomb squad had been there. After months of meticulous, independent investigation, Glenn and Kathy Wilburn got the sheriff's department to actually admit what they already knew from multiple, consistent eyewitness testimonies. A government bomb squad had been at the Murrah Federal building that very morning. Emergency radio transmission transcripts from that morning also prove that many policemen and firefighters witnessed BATF at the scene. Oklahoma lawyer Daniel J. Atomatis was interviewed saying, "There was this fairly large truck with a trailer behind it. It had a shield on the side of the door that said bomb disposal or bomb squad below it, and I really found that interesting. You know, I'd never seen anything like that in person." Alex Jones said, "Do you realize what you've just read? The government had multiple surveillance cameras. The cameras also show the BATF agents hiding out right down the street, preparing to pounce on the operation and declare themselves the heroes, the saviors. From A to Z, there are federal fingerprints all over the Oklahoma City bombing, and the government is doing everything it can to suppress the truth. Bill Clinton is the servant of the New World Order, whose approval rating exploded after the attack. His attack dog, the butcher of Waco, Janet Reno, was very happy to blame everything on Christians, conservatives, and gun owners. It was her excuse to expand federal control over local police and to merge the military with the police in new, giant anti-terrorism training programs." David Icke wrote, "The U.S. government hired the same company to carry away the remains of the Oklahoma City bombing and the World Trade Center. The company is ironically named Controlled Demolitions." And Paul Joseph Watson wrote, "The handling of the World Trade Center rubble almost mirrors that of the Oklahoma City Alfred P. Murrah building. After eyewitnesses reported several explosions and original newscasts detailed the recovery of second and third explosive devices, the government declared that there was just one bomb, and the remains of the building were professionally demolished by Controlled Demolitions, Inc., the same company that was first on the scene to cart away the World Trade Center rubble. Debris of the federal building was then carted off to a private landfill and guarded 24 hours a day by Wackenhut private security. Nothing to hide there then, hey? The FEMA team that investigated why the towers collapsed was headed by Dr. W. Gene Corley, the same individual the government called upon to whitewash the Waco fire inquiry and the Oklahoma City bombing. Another strange coincidence to note is that just 2 years earlier, in 1993, Martin Keating, the brother of Oklahoma's governor Frank Keating, wrote a novel called The Final Jihad. In his book, a man named Tom McVeigh bombs an Oklahoma City federal building. Linda Kavanaugh from NBC's Oklahoma affiliate KFOR even reported on this oddity, saying, "The news channel has learned of another strange development. Apparently, before the bombing, Governor Frank Keating's brother, Martin, had been working on a novel about a terrorist bombing in Oklahoma City. Stranger still, one of the characters in the novel was named Thomas McVeigh." Also adding to the mystery, Martin Keating dedicated his book to an unknown group called the Knights of the Secret Circle.